The rain pounded against the broken windows of the old church. In the dim candlelight, Alana clutched Marcus's hand, her heart racing. Outside, the angry shouts of the mob grew louder, closer. Someone had thrown a brick earlier, and the shattered glass was still scattered across the pews. She tried not to think about what would happen if they were caught. She tried not to think about the look on her father's face when he found out. "Are you scared?" Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible over the storm and the chaos outside. Alana looked at him, her dark curls damp from the rain. She could see the fear in his eyes, but there was something stronger there too. Defiance. Hope. Not of them. She whispered back, though her trembling hands betrayed her. "I'm scared of losing you." Marcus squeezed her hand tighter. "We can't let them win, Alana. Not tonight. Not ever." The door to the church creaked open. Both of them froze. The story of Alana and Marcus began long before that night, long before the storm or the shattered glass. It began on a quiet summer afternoon in their small southern town, where everyone knew everyone's business. Alana had grown up in the white neighborhood on the hill, where the houses were big and the lawns perfectly trimmed. Marcus lived across the tracks, in the part of town where the roads were cracked and the streetlights flickered at night. They met by accident or maybe by fate when Alana's car broke down near the community center where Marcus volunteered. She was trying to change a tire when Marcus walked over, hands in his pockets, and asked if she needed help. "Got it covered," she said, wiping grease off her hands. He raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Looks like that jack's about to slip." It did. The car shifted, and she stumbled back just in time. Marcus caught her arm to steady her, his grip firm but gentle. Their eyes met. "Thanks," she muttered, embarrassed. "No problem," he said with a small smile. "Let me take care of it." Their friendship started small, exchanging waves when they saw each other in town, short conversations when Alana started volunteering at the community center too. But it wasn't long before those conversations turned into late-night phone calls, whispered secrets, and stolen moments. They both knew what people would say if they found out. "You know this won't be easy," Marcus said one night as they sat on the hood of his car, watching the stars. "I don't care," Alana replied, though she wasn't sure it was true. "I'm tired of living my life for other people." He nodded, but the worry never left his face. The trouble started when Alana's father saw them together at the diner. It was a small town, and gossip spread fast. By the next morning, her parents were demanding answers. "You're not seeing him," her father said, his face red with anger. "I won't allow it. He's a good person," Alana argued, but it didn't matter. To her parents, Marcus wasn't a person. He was a symbol of everything they feared, everything they thought they'd kept out of their lives. "You're throwing away your future," her mother said, her voice breaking. "Do you know what people will say?" "I don't care," Alana said again, but the truth was, she did. She cared about the whispers, the judgment, the way people she'd known her whole life suddenly looked at her like she was a stranger. The threats started soon after that. Anonymous notes left on Marcus's doorstep. "Slashed tires. One night, someone threw a rock through his window. Maybe we should stop," Marcus said, his voice heavy. "For your sake." But Alana refused. "I'm not giving up on us," she said. "I won't let them win." The night of the storm was supposed to be their escape. They'd planned everything, pack the car, drive north, start over where no one knew them. But someone must have overheard, because when they arrived at the church to meet Marcus's cousin, the mob was already there. The door to the church creaked open, and for a moment, all Alana could hear was her own heartbeat. Then a familiar voice called out, "It's me," Marcus's cousin said, stepping inside. "We have to go now." They ran through the back door, into the rain-soaked night. The mob saw them and shouted, but the storm covered their escape. Years later, in a tiny apartment in Chicago, Alana looked at the faded photograph on her dresser. It was a picture of her and Marcus on their wedding day, surrounded by friends who had become their family. They had lost so much: her parents, his childhood home, but they had found something greater. They had found each other. And that, Alana thought, was worth everything. Hit that subscribe button and join our loving family. Be the first to know when we upload a new story of love. And don't forget to like this video and share it with your loved ones. Let's spread some love together. Remember, love is not something you find. Love is something that finds you. And we hope that our stories find you and fill your heart with warmth, joy, and lots of love. As Alana traced her fingers over the photo frame, she thought about everything they had endured. Life hadn't been easy, not even in Chicago. They faced stares when they walked down the street hand in hand, awkward silences when people realized they were a couple, and the subtle yet sharp sting of being treated like they didn't belong. But no mob, no whispers, no slamming doors had ever shaken their love. "Mommy," a small voice called from the other room, pulling Alana out of her thoughts. She set the photograph down and walked to the bedroom, where their 6-year-old daughter, Maya, sat up in bed, clutching her favorite stuffed bear. "What's wrong, baby?" Alana asked, sitting beside her and smoothing her curly hair. "Why do people stare at us?" Maya asked, her big brown eyes filled with confusion. "At school, my friends say it's weird that Daddy's skin is different from yours." Alana's heart ached, but she forced a smile. "Come here," she said, pulling Maya onto her lap. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" Maya shook her head. "I see the best parts of me and the best parts of Daddy. I see someone who's strong and kind and beautiful. People stare because they don't understand how special you are. And that's okay. Not everyone is going to understand, but that doesn't mean they're right." Maya leaned her head against Alana's chest. "But it hurts," she whispered. "I know it does," Alana said, her voice soft but firm. "But you have something more powerful than their words. You have love, and love is stronger than anything, even when it feels like the world is against you." Later that night, Alana sat on the couch, staring out the window at the city lights. Marcus came in, carrying a cup of tea for her. He handed it to her without a word, sitting down beside her. "Do you ever think about going back?" she asked. Suddenly, Marcus didn't need to ask where she meant. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but not for the reasons you think. I don't want to go back to prove anything to anyone. I'd go back to show Maya where she comes from, to show her that we didn't let hate drive us away. We left because we chose love, not because we were afraid." Alana nodded. "Maybe one day." That day came sooner than they expected. A letter arrived in the mail from a woman Alana hadn't spoken to in years, her mother. It was short, written in shaky handwriting, but the words hit her like a wave. "Alana, I was wrong. I let fear and pride push you away, and I've regretted it every day since. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to meet my granddaughter before it's too late. Love." Mom's drive back to their hometown was quiet, each mile filled with unspoken tension. Alana kept glancing at Marcus, searching for any sign of doubt, but his face was calm, resolute. Maya, in the back seat, was excited about meeting her grandmother but didn't understand the weight of the journey. When they arrived, the house looked the same, but everything felt different. Alana's mother stood on the porch, her once proud posture now bent with age and regret. She took a step forward, her eyes locking on Maya. "You must be Maya," she said, her voice trembling. "You look just like your mother did at your age." Maya smiled shyly, and before Alana could say anything, her mother knelt down and opened her arms. Maya hesitated, then ran to her, wrapping her small arms around her grandmother's neck. Inside, the conversation was cautious, tiptoeing around years of pain and silence. But when Alana's mother turned to Marcus, the room grew heavy. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But thank you for loving my daughter, for standing by her when I didn't." Marcus didn't speak right away. When he did, his voice was steady. "We've all made mistakes," he said. "What matters is what we do now." As they drove back to Chicago, Alana felt lighter than she had in years. The wounds weren't healed, not entirely, but the scars no longer felt like chains. They were a reminder of what they had survived, of how love had broken every barrier. In their path, Marcus reached over and took her hand, his grip as steady as it had been that stormy night in the church. She looked at him and smiled, knowing that no matter what came next, they would face it together. The months that followed were a delicate dance of rebuilding bridges, step by cautious step. Alana and her mother started exchanging letters and phone calls, the conversations hesitant at first but growing warmer with time. Maya quickly became the unifying thread between them, her laughter and innocence softening years of bitterness and regret. One warm spring afternoon, Alana's mother visited Chicago for the first time. She arrived at their modest apartment with a suitcase in one hand and a homemade pie in the other. It was the first time she had ever stepped into their world. "This is cozy," she said, her voice tinged with awkwardness as she looked around the apartment. "It's home," Alana replied simply. Marcus walked into the room then, his apron covered in flour. He had been baking cookies with Maya, who trailed behind him with dough smudged on her cheeks. Alana's mother hesitated, her gaze lingering on Marcus. "Thank you for inviting me," she said, her voice quiet but sincere. "Your family," Marcus replied, his tone kind but firm. "That's what matters." Over dinner, the conversation turned to stories of the past. Alana's mother shared memories of her childhood, moments Alana had long forgotten. Maya listened intently, her wide eyes flicking between her grandmother and her parents. "Grandma, why didn't you like Daddy before?" Maya asked suddenly, her innocent question slicing through the room like a blade. Alana froze, her fork midway to her mouth. Marcus reached over and gently squeezed her hand, silently encouraging her mother to answer. Her mother set down her glass of water and took a deep breath. "I was afraid," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I thought I was protecting your mom by keeping her away from people who look different from us. But I was wrong. My fear blinded me, and I hurt a lot of people because of it." Maya frowned. "But Daddy's not scary. He's nice." Her grandmother smiled through her tears. "You're right, sweetheart. He is. And I'm so sorry I didn't see that sooner." The apology, while long overdue, marked the beginning of a deeper healing. Alana's mother started visiting more often, staying for weekends and even holidays. Slowly, she began to embrace Marcus not just as her daughter's husband but as part of her family. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Alana found her mother and Marcus sitting together on the balcony, talking quietly. She couldn't hear their conversation, but the sight of them sharing a laugh was enough to bring tears to her eyes. "They're starting to understand each other," Alana said to herself, a bittersweet ache blooming in her chest. It had taken years of pain and perseverance to reach this point, but they were here. Against all odds, the final piece of the puzzle fell into place one summer afternoon when Alana and Marcus decided to return to their hometown for the first time as a family. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but they felt it was time to reclaim the place that had tried so hard to push them out. When they arrived, the streets felt both familiar and foreign. The same houses stood in neat rows, but the memories of whispered gossip and hateful glares lingered like ghosts. Walking into the town square, they noticed a small crowd gathered around a new community mural. It was bright and bold, depicting images of unity and love. At the center of the mural was a painting of two hands, one light-skinned, one dark, intertwined against a backdrop of stars. "That's beautiful," Alana whispered, her voice catching in her throat. A woman turned at the sound of her voice and gasped. "Alana, is that you?" It was Mrs. Greer, the town librarian who had known Alana since she was a child. Her eyes darted to Marcus and Maya, and for a moment, Alana braced herself for the judgment she had always expected. But Mrs. Greer smiled warmly. "Welcome home," she said simply, her words filled with genuine kindness. That day, Alana and Marcus walked through the town hand in hand, their daughter skipping ahead of them. They visited the places that held painful memories and replaced them with new ones, moments of laughter, connection, and healing. As the sun set, Alana turned to Marcus, her heart full. "We did it," she said softly. "We didn't let them win." Marcus pulled her close, his eyes shining with pride. "No, we didn't, and we never will." And in that moment, Alana knew that their love had not just broken barriers, it had built bridges, shining a light in places that had once been consumed by darkness. The idea of Marcus reconnecting with his family came up one evening as they sat together on the balcony. The summer air was warm, and Maya had just gone to bed after another round of endless questions about the stars. Alana leaned against Marcus, her head on his shoulder, as they watched the city lights flicker below. "Do you ever think about your family?" Alana asked softly. Marcus didn't answer right away. His jaw tightened, and she could feel the tension in his shoulders. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but it's complicated." "It doesn't have to be," she said gently, reaching for his hand. "If my mom and I could find our way back to each other, maybe you and your family can too." Marcus let out a bitter laugh. "It's not the same, Alana. Your mom was blinded by fear and pride, but deep down, she still loved you. My family, they turned their backs on me completely. They didn't even try to understand." Alana stayed quiet for a moment, letting his words settle. Then she said, "People can change, Marcus. Sometimes it just takes time. Maybe they're waiting for you to take the first step." The decision wasn't easy, but after weeks of thought, Marcus finally agreed. They planned the trip carefully, packing their bags and preparing for whatever might come. Alana and Maya were nervous but supportive, knowing this was Marcus's journey to lead. When they pulled into the driveway of Marcus's childhood home, his heart felt like it might burst out of his chest. The house looked smaller than he remembered, its once bright paint now faded and peeling. The garden his mother used to tend was overgrown with weeds. "You okay?" Alana asked, placing a hand on his arm. He nodded, though he wasn't sure if it was true. "Let's do this." The door opened before they could knock, revealing Marcus's younger sister, Janai. She froze, her eyes wide as she took in the sight of her brother standing there with a wife and child. "Marcus," she whispered, as if she couldn't believe it was really him. "Hey, Janai," he said, his voice shaky. Is Mom home?" Janai hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." The living room smelled like old wood and lavender, just as Marcus remembered. His mother appeared in the doorway, her hair streaked with gray and her hands trembling. She stared at Marcus, her expression a mixture of shock, guilt, and something else he couldn't quite name. "Marcus," she said, her voice barely audible. "Hi, Mom," he replied, his own voice thick with emotion. "It's been a while." The conversation started awkwardly, with long silences and words left unsaid. Marcus introduced Alana and Maya, who greeted his mother and sister with kindness despite the tension in the air. It was Maya, as always, who broke the ice. "Grandma?" she asked, her wide eyes curious. Marcus's mother blinked, tears welling up as she knelt down to Maya's level. "Yes, sweetheart? Why didn't we meet before?" Maya asked, her innocent question hanging in the air. Marcus's mother looked up at him, her face crumpling. "Because I was a fool," she said, her voice breaking. "I let my pride and my anger push him away, and I've regretted it every single day." Over the next few hours, the walls between them began to crumble. Marcus's mother apologized, not just with words but with the raw vulnerability in her eyes. She spoke about how lost she felt when he left, how she'd convinced herself she was right even when her heart told her otherwise. Janai, too, admitted her guilt. "I should have stood by you," she said, "but I was scared. I didn't want to lose Mom, and I didn't know how to fight for you." Marcus listened, his emotions swirling. He had carried so much anger, so much hurt, but seeing their remorse, hearing their pain softened something in him. By the end of the evening, they were sitting around the old kitchen table, sharing stories and laughter for the first time in years. Maya was fast asleep on the couch, her head resting on Jenny's lap. "I'm so proud of you," Marcus's mother said, her hand resting on his. "For building a life filled with love, for being brave enough to come back." "It wasn't just me," Marcus said, glancing at Alana. "She taught me that love is worth fighting for." The visit wasn't perfect. There were still wounds to heal, conversations to have, and trust to rebuild. But it was a start, a chance to move forward, to bridge the divide that had kept them apart for so long. As they drove back to Chicago, Marcus looked in the rearview mirror at Maya, who was humming softly in the back seat. He reached over and took Alana's hand, a small smile playing on his lips. "You were right," he said. "About what?" Alana asked, smiling back, people can change. And sometimes it's worth taking the first step. Alana squeezed his hand, her heart full. I told you love breaks barriers, she said softly, and as the miles passed, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. For the first time, his family was whole again. Hit that subscribe button and join our loving family. Be the first to know when we upload a new story of love. And don't forget to like this video and share it with your loved ones. Let's spread some love together. Remember, love is not something you find. Love is something that finds you. And we hope that our stories find you and fill your heart with warmth, joy, and lots of love.